Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Ask the Expert, an award-winning daily series dedicated to helping small businesses. We're broadcasting around the world on Facebook and YouTube. A huge thank you and welcome to everyone joining us. Today's show is a special one about helping small businesses become sustainable. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments in the live feed. My name is Cassie Divine. I am a small business champion and earth-loving senior vice president at Intuit, the global leading technology platform powering QuickBooks, TurboTax, Credit Karma, and Mint. Today's conversation is such an important one. According to the UN, if global warming continues at its current rate, we will see irreversible damage by 2030. For small businesses, the effects of climate change can pose additional operating barriers and challenges they cannot afford. Consider things like new cash flow and growth challenges by increasing operating costs, disrupting supply chains, posing new shifts in new shifts in demand, potentially causing businesses to close. So many things that we want to avoid. Now, small businesses have such an opportunity. Small businesses represent 90% of businesses globally and have a critical role and a critical opportunity to play to combat the effects of climate change. Between supply chains, packaging, shipping, the energy required to run an office or keep equipment running, the actions small businesses take can have a huge impact on climate change. While small businesses traditionally haven't had the resources to invest in climate positive solutions, we have so many great opportunities we'll talk about for that ability to impact a sustainable future. For example, according to a survey conducted by Carbon Trust last year, 68% of small and medium-sized enterprises do not have a policy for improving energy efficiency and cited lack of time, lack of resources as barriers to help them run a greener business. But who better to help combat climate change than the small business owners who are innovators, game changers, and the backbone of our communities, our cities, our economies, and our world. Today, we have two climate experts joining us today. First, I'm pleased to welcome Andrew Griffith, Member of Parliament for Arundel and South Downs, and the UK's Net Zero Business Champion. Andrew spent 27 years working in business before dedicating himself to public service and now works to support impact on climate. Andrew will be answering questions later in the program. Please share your questions for him in the chat. Briefly joining us by video, we also have the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts and co-sponsor of the new Green Deal climate legislation, Ed Markey. Senator Markey has served in the U.S. Congress for more than 3 decades and is the chair of the Senate Climate Change Committee Task Force. Both are strong believers that we can tackle the climate emergency by encouraging individuals and businesses to take action with supportive governments behind them. Before we move on to your questions, let's hear in their own words why they are so passionate about climate action. Andrew, let's start with you.
Cassie, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm even more passionate about business than sustainability, I should say, and your words were beautiful in terms of the importance of small business, the fact that together we aggregate up to a huge part of the economy. You all have a great position of trust and bond with your customers and your communities, small businesses much more so than big businesses. And the good news is there is so much we can do. I understand it's hard. Running a small business is one of the hardest things, and you have an enormous opportunity cost on your time. But because there's so many of us, little small steps that each of us take, small, simple steps, often things that can save money or save time, not always things that are going to cost you more or make your life more complicated, can really compound up to make a difference. And as Cassie said, whether you come at this through the lens set of climate, or what we're doing for nature, or you just want to be a good steward of the Earth's resources, there's never been a bigger challenge and there's never been a better time. So one of the bookends of my role is that in just 9 weeks' time, the United Kingdom is hosting the UN Climate Summit in a city called Glasgow. And representatives of every country on the planet are going to come together and try and make their pledges for what we can do on climate. But when the world leaders have come and gone and they've tided away all the flags, at the end of the day, the people who are going to make a difference are business leaders in every community, in every nation. And so it really is important, and it has been a delight to partner with a dynamic, forward-thinking, tech-enabled company like Intuit that has deep relationships with small businesses and is really powering the economy on this agenda. And so today, I hope we can start to unpick some of the hurdles, because what I hear from small businesses is, I get it, I'd like to do my bit, but I'm not always sure how, and I'm not always sure where to start. So my biggest message is, let's start somewhere. Let's not do nothing, let's do something. That's how change happens. And by working with companies like Intuit, hopefully we can put the resources in your hands, make you smart about some of the simple steps that you can take to make a pledge to join what we call the race to net zero today. Thanks, Cassie.
Wonderful, Andrew. Thank you so much for that. Senator Ed Markey also joins us by video to share the importance of involving small businesses across the globe in the climate change conversation. Senator Markey.
Hello, I'm Senator Ed Markey, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm excited to join all of you for this critically important conversation. The fight against climate change is the challenge of our generation. And I've spent my career in the United States Congress working for bold, ambitious, and just solutions to tackle the climate crisis. When I was a kid growing up in Malden, here in Massachusetts, all I wanted to do was go for a swim in the Malden River, like I was Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn. But my mother always told me, no. The pollution from the local mills, from the chemical companies, from the coal companies had made the river deadly. It was black, the river, with a purple haze that was well before Jimi Hendrix had his great hit. And I was just told, whatever you do, don't swim in the Malden River. And that's why when I came to Congress, I fought to clean up the hazardous waste dumps that were poisoning the air and water for children in the neighborhoods of Malden and Woburn and all of those cities that had just become environmental sacrifice zones for polluting industries. We cleaned up a lot of those dumps and we delivered for those kids. Well, we have another generation of kids, and this one is demanding we clean up the planet. And that's what I've been fighting to do. In 2009, I co-authored the Clean Energy and Security Act, which popularly was referred to as the Waxman-Markey Bill, because that was the first and only comprehensive climate and clean energy bill to ever pass a chamber of the United States Congress. The polluting companies then killed it in the United States Senate after it had passed in the House. Well, today, the need for urgent climate action is even clearer. And that's why in February of 2019, I first introduced the Green New Deal resolution with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which outlines a 10-year mobilization to deliver jobs and justice and climate action on the scale and the scope that we need. Today, the climate crisis is not at our doorstep. It's already in our homes. Floods in New York and New Jersey, hurricanes in the south, fires in the west, rising sea levels in Massachusetts. The need for urgent climate action cannot be ignored any longer. Lives have been lost, homes have been destroyed, and families broken apart because of extreme weather fueled by human-caused climate change. Here in the United States, the Dixie Fire in California has burned an area larger than the size of New York City. And that's only one fire in California, in Oregon, in Washington State. Hurricane Ida left catastrophic damage in the state of Louisiana, leaving 1 million people without power, and then just continued its rampage up the East Coast, through Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. Just devastating. 9.5 inches of rain in New Bedford, Massachusetts, in one day. Just absolutely unbelievable. And a heat wave in the Pacific Northwest that led to more than 500 deaths this summer. And it was directly linked to our warming Earth and climate change. We're losing lives and livelihoods. In 2020, the United States experienced 22 extreme weather events costing $95 billion in damages. Meanwhile, according to the United Nations, transitioning to a green economy could yield a direct economic gain of $26 trillion globally through 2030, compared with business as usual. And we could create over 65 million new low carbon energy jobs. When critics question if we can afford to invest in bold climate solutions, the answer seems to be obvious. It's not, can we afford to invest? It's, can we afford not to invest? Because the benefits are so great, and the tragedies that we avoid are so great as well. Combating the climate crisis is our greatest challenge, but it's also presenting us with an enormous and unprecedented opportunity, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. Small and medium-sized companies are the backbone of our economy. They make up 90% of our businesses and more than 50% of employment globally. And now they will also play a crucial role in combating the climate crisis. Today's businesses are facing both growing risks from the climate crisis and growing opportunities presented by engaging in climate action. Resilience in the face of climate chaos is make or break for businesses. And many large companies expect their suppliers to demonstrate their climate readiness and proactivity in addressing the climate risks. By cutting their emissions and achieving carbon neutrality, small and medium-sized enterprises can protect their reputations and their long-term business certainty. And additionally, companies that cut their carbon emissions also cut their costs by investing in energy efficiency measures or adding on-site clean energy resources. Your businesses can save money and help safeguard our planet at the same time. In the Senate, I'm fighting for policies that will help businesses take these critically important actions. Right now, Congress is working to pass a budget reconciliation package that has to unleash clean energy in American manufacturing by financing clean energy technologies, clean buildings, clean communities, and create millions of new jobs in our country. We can secure long-term tax credits for offshore wind, solar, electric vehicles, and battery storage, and enable businesses to invest in these technologies with the help of a publicly funded national climate bank, also called a Clean Energy Technology Accelerator. And that will help to provide the funding, the low cost funding for small and medium-sized businesses interested in addressing their carbon footprint. Do it now, do it right. That climate bank, that climate accelerator is going to be there for small businesses all across the country. And it will be transformational. In fact, we believe for every dollar the federal government puts up, it'll unleash $7 to $10 of private sector investment. That's what private sector analysts like McKinsey say is basically what's going to happen. So the future of your business and our planet depends on your willingness to rise to the challenge of addressing the climate crisis. We're counting on you. There's no time to wait. We can do this. We can be engaging in massive job creation that saves all of creation, and small and medium-sized businesses are going to be at the center of that economic revolution. Thank you all so much for everything that you're doing and are going to do to make sure that we accomplish this huge economic achievement for the protection of the entire planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Well, you all just heard the burning platform for the opportunity to combat climate change and the amazing opportunity, the amazing role that small businesses can play together to do so. Now, policymakers don't often get a chance to hear from small businesses directly, especially as they go to negotiate regulation and ideas on the global stage. So this is a wonderful opportunity to hear from you. As you heard Andrew mention, he is getting ready for COP26, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change. And I love his call to action that when the flags are put away, we will get to work. So it's time for us to take a deeper dive with him and answer some of your questions. Andrew, the first question, there's a lot of enthusiasm from small businesses. How are some of the ways you see small businesses able to influence consumer behavior and impact carbon emissions?
Thank you, Cassie. Look, like all of human development, this is very powerful when we tell stories. And so the most effective channel is to talk to your customers. Many people now have very sophisticated, even the smallest business often has e-marketing tools. They've got their own little databases of customers, or it may be as simple as when you're serving them at the till, tell them what you're doing in terms of sustainability. People love stories, and we're all on a journey. This is a big, bold, it's a revolutionary journey. It's going to turn many small businesses into really big businesses, because what I love about small businesses is you're nimble. You can act. There's no big committee. You don't have legacy assets. You can move really fast and take simple steps in real time. But if I have one kind of way to engage, it is to tell stories. Make sure there's a sustainability button on your website so people can hear about how you're sourcing a more local supplier. If you've switched your vehicle to one that's a little bit more fuel efficient, if you've done some things in your premises or your processes, talk about that. And I don't want to leave without mentioning the role of technology. I mean, the fact that we're all here, how many of us, tens of thousands of us here today, Cassie, that you've gathered, and no one's got on a single plane or jumped in a single automobile. So technology has a really important role to play, because a lot of how we make better use of the Earth's precious assets is about how you optimize resources. Less waste, a little bit less travel sometimes, make better use of our time. And all of those things are opportunities for small business. I used to be a finance director. I'm familiar with how do you find dimes down the back of the sofa, see if you can do things for a little bit less money so you've got some money to reinvest somewhere else. And a lot of the things that I'm excited to find in my role that small businesses can do also save money. And that's a great opportunity. Save the world and save a little bit of money as you go. In some countries, there's going to be individual programs and grants, but the biggest thing that's in shortest supply, I think, is often a little bit of advice and sharing and telling those stories. Anyone who's interested in finding out more can go to something called the SME Climate Hub, and that, together with resources that Intuit are bringing forward, that's a good source of advice. So there's bags of advice out there. It's all just a click away.
I love that. I'm living proof that the small business storytelling works. All of the jewelry I think I'm wearing is purchased from a local shop, perch in my San Francisco neighborhood, all from stories the small business owner has told me about his commitment to local artisans and manufacturing and supply chains that are not only good for our environment, but good for his business. And so such great advice. Andrew, looking ahead to 2030 and 2050, what's the UK government's long-term vision for engaging small businesses on climate change?
There's a couple of levels, Cassie. The first of all is the government, just as your government, the US, has set an ambitious target at governmental level to reduce our carbon emissions. In the UK, it's pretty bold, right? It's we're going to reduce the carbon emissions this country emits by 78% by 2035. So there's always a role of government to sort of set the shape of the curve to the overall high level ambition. And then, of course, to communicate that. I don't expect many small businesses listening are particularly familiar with that high level discussion. And there's no reason why they should be. But we all need clear goals and we all need ambitions to aim for. So the first thing is governments to set their own goals and to communicate them well. The second is to put information in the hands of small businesses. And that's growing every day. It's become quite a busy space, actually. You can spend quite a lot of time online. And one of the roles of government is to bring together those sources of advice. And in our case, in the case of the United Kingdom, to get behind something called the United Nations Race to Zero. Now, there are a lot of different standards out there, and we in business know the power of a kite mark, right? You know, a kite mark, a brand, it cuts through, it simplifies. And so one of the things the government's been trying to do is say, you know, do lots, but if you do one thing, go here, sign up to the United Nations Race to Zero. And that's for the very biggest companies all the way down to the very smallest. And then the third thing for governments everywhere is to show that they are on the side of small business. That could be government procurement, making sure that that's small business and climate friendly. It could be producing some programs to help businesses adapt. Simple thing. One of the simple steps that a lot of us are going to take over the next decade is to switch our vehicle for one that's got hybrid or electric power. Fine, great, but of course we need a charging infrastructure to do that. And so, you know, coming forward with grants and support schemes to help businesses do that. So if you turn around and say to your employees, hey, how about, you know, we switch our van, we switch our cars to something that's zero emission, there's already a PowerPoint that will work in your place of work. So those are examples, Cassie, and that's the sort of structure that the government's going to put in place. Bold targets, information, and then a helping hand.
I love that. I love that. Speaking of a helping hand, one of the questions in the chat is, what role do you see the private sector and larger corporations needing to play to support small businesses in this push for reversing climate change?
That is a really good question, because I work as much with big businesses as small. You're my first love, because small businesses are dynamic, and you're of course the big businesses of tomorrow. But I've been working a lot with some of the very largest businesses, and my message to them is, as they sign up, they will have thousands of small businesses in their supply chain. And also the innovation and dynamism of small businesses is often the opportunity that they need to make the change themselves. So they need to be willing to sometimes invest, move away from, you know, what can sometimes be a transactional relationship, and make that more long-term, because we need to invest all the way down. It's like squeezing a balloon, right? If you're a big business, you can start in one place, but ultimately you've got to work all the way down your supply chain. And that is typically a very large number of small businesses. So they've got to invest in that journey. They also need to communicate clearly, and they should be creating opportunities. This is a story of innovation. This is a technical revolution, just like digital. Some of us are old enough to remember that journey that we've all been on over the last 30 years in digital. This is going to be very analogous to that. So we've all got to work together.
I love your push for small businesses and big businesses to think about all the areas that today are transactional and make them transformational. What an opportunity. Andrew, one last question before we close. The audience is curious to hear, in your mind, if leaders agreed to one thing at COP26, what would it be?
Well, we've got a list of 4 in the United Kingdom as we lead, but the biggest single thing is to agree ambitious carbon reduction targets, whereby the biggest emitters, that'll be us, the UK, the US, the northern developed countries, commit to really ambitious reductions from where we are today over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So, you know, table stakes is to at least halve the emissions. And I think we can do much better than that. I think there's going to be huge opportunities. It's a new industrial revolution. We can create new forms of energy. And one of the things that always strikes me is that every technology we need to solve this problem as a planet and as developed economies already exists. This is not a moonshot. We don't need to solve scientific problems that have not already been solved. What we all need to do is adopt the new technologies quickly. If you're a small business, that can be as simple as switching your energy provider to one who's entirely renewable. So, that doesn't cost you any more. You can pretty much go online, search around and exercise your right to switch provider. A lot of the other things are as simple as the things that would save you money. Turning down the thermostat, turning off the lights at night, this is my advice, I'll be honest with you, Cassie, remembering to turn off your computer at the end of the day. So it doesn't just sit there overnight, burning energy, consuming the grid. So little things do add up and make a big difference.
I love that. Little things and small businesses can have such a massive opportunity. And COP26, what a great opportunity to mobilize millions of businesses around the world and take action that will impact our world, our customers, and all of our families and economies. Thank you again, Andrew, for leading the charge here, for taking the time to talk with small businesses around the world about your vision and answer their questions. We so appreciate the time that you and Senator Markey have taken today.
It's been a great pleasure, Cassie. Thank you for everything that you are doing, both to revolutionize the world of business, but also now to really join in how we can improve the world's sustainability. Thank you, Cassie.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor to partner here and be part of this positive change. I want to emphasize again how important it is for small businesses to commit to cutting carbon emissions. Andrew mentioned this website, but I want to say it again. Visit smeclimatehub.org/QuickBooks and continue to engage in the conversation. There's also all kinds of resources there. We've already announced our commitment to help 30,000 businesses in the United Kingdom make a pledge to take climate action ahead of COP26. And we're committed to doing everything we can to help support you, small businesses around the world, on their climate journey. We look forward to continuing the work after the flags are put away to impact climate action positively and work with climate champions like Andrew Griffith and Senator Markey to accomplish these bold goals Andrew spoke of. For more information and the resources, check out our corporate responsibility page on Intuit.com. Maybe some good inspiration as you think about how you'll talk about your own sustainability efforts to your customers. Lastly, for those in the United Kingdom, make sure to check out our daily edition of Ask the Expert, featuring business leaders and accountants every Monday through Thursday on our QuickBooks UK YouTube and Facebook channels. Thank you to all of our honored guests and all of you for joining us today. Let's go make a positive change together. Thank you.